The stars were dying, and Commander Jake Morrison knew at the moment the transmission reached his ship. The UES Sentinel had been drifting in the void between galaxies for 3 months, mapping dark matter currents and testing new jump drives. When the message arrived through channels that shouldn't have existed, the signal bore encryption signatures from the Galactic Council, an organization that had only contacted humanity 6 months ago, and the voice belonged to Ambassador Zeth Kar of the Altarian Republic. Jake had met Zeth Kar once before, during the first diplomatic exchange on the neutral station at Kepler 186f. The ambassador had been composed then, his crystalline features reflecting the calm authority of a species that had mastered interstellar travel before humans discovered fire. Now that same voice cracked with terror as it spoke through the ship's communication array. "Commander Morrison, if you are receiving this transmission, then our worst fears have been realized. The Devourers have returned from the void beyond our galaxy's edge. They are not like anything we have faced before. They consume entire star systems, converting organic matter and energy into raw fuel for their expansion. 17 species have already fallen to their advance, and our combined fleets number in the millions, yet we cannot stop them." The message continued, but Jake found himself staring at the tactical display showing the galaxy's outer rim. Raid. Markers indicated lost systems, their positions forming a pattern that made his stomach turn. The Devourers weren't just attacking randomly. They were moving with purpose, consuming resources, and growing stronger with each victory. Traditional energy weapons prove useless against their adaptive shielding technology. Their machines learn from each encounter, becoming immune to our defensive strategies within hours. We have tried everything our combined knowledge can produce, but they adapt faster than we can innovate. The Council has advised me to make contact with all known species, including your own, to request immediate military assistance. Jake's second-in-command, Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster, had been monitoring the alien data streams that accompanied the message. Her face had gone pale as she processed the information, and she turned to him with wide eyes. "Sir, the data they're sending shows fleet compositions and battle reports. The Centauri Alliance lost 400 ships in their first engagement. The Vegan Confederacy had their entire home system consumed in less than 6 hours. These Devourers, they're not just winning battles, they're erasing civilizations." The commander studied the tactical readouts, noting the alien fleet formations and weapon signatures. Everything about their approach to warfare seemed precise, calculated, and utterly civilized. Energy beams fired in coordinated patterns, defensive formations that maximized shield coverage, and retreat strategies that preserved maximum personnel. It was warfare as conducted by species that had evolved beyond the need for brutality. "Commander Morrison," Zeth Kar's voice continued, "your species has recently made contact with our galactic community, and our preliminary studies indicate that your military capabilities differ significantly from established galactic norms. While we have moved beyond kinetic weapons and projectile-based armaments, your people still employ such systems alongside energy weapons. Our tactical analysts are curious about this approach, though they consider it primitive." Jake almost smiled. At that assessment, primitive, the galactic species had no idea what humanity had spent the last 5,000 years perfecting. While they had evolved past the need for creative destruction, humans had embraced it, refined it, and turned it into an art form. "We are prepared to offer your species full membership in the Galactic Council, access to our technological databases, and territorial rights in exchange for military assistance. However, we must warn you that the Devourers have proven immune to all conventional tactics. They adapt to energy patterns, learn from defensive strategies, and counter every logical military response within hours of first contact." The transmission ended with coordinates for an emergency council meeting at the Proxima Centauri station. Jake looked at his crew, seeing the same mixture of excitement and dread in their faces that he felt in his chest. Humanity had been waiting for this moment since first contact, the chance to prove themselves worthy of galactic society. But not like this, not with the fate of entire civilizations hanging in the balance. "Set course for Proxima Centauri," he ordered. Maximum burn. And Amy, send a priority transmission to Earth Command. Tell them we need to speak with Admiral Ben Carter immediately. As the Sentinel's engines fired and the ship accelerated toward the galaxy's interior, Jake found himself thinking about the Devourer's adaptive capabilities. They could counter logical military responses, learn from energy patterns, and adapt to defensive strategies. But there was one thing they had probably never encountered: the illogical, chaotic, creative approach to warfare that humans had developed over millennia of conflict. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when desperate civilizations contacted the one species that had never learned to fight fair. Admiral Ben Carter stood before the massive viewport of Earth's orbital defense platform, watching the blue marble of his homeworld spin slowly below. The emergency transmission from Commander Morrison had arrived 3 hours ago, and since then, the platform had been buzzing with activity. Ships from every corner of human space were converging on Earth, their captains demanding answers about the galactic crisis that threatened to engulf them all. The formal request from the Galactic Council lay open on his desk, its holographic text shimmering with alien symbols that the translation matrix rendered into stark English. High Chancellor Valther, a crystalline being whose species had mastered interstellar travel when humanity was still discovering bronze, had personally authored the plea for assistance. The document was filled with technical specifications, battle reports, and casualty figures that painted a picture of systematic annihilation. Admiral, the Council representatives are requesting immediate audience, announced Captain Lisa Ward, humanity's official liaison to the galactic community. She had been present during the first contact protocols and understood alien diplomatic customs better than anyone else in the human fleet. Her expression was grim as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "Send them in," Carter replied, straightening his uniform. The next few minutes would determine whether humanity stepped onto the galactic stage as a junior partner or as something far more dangerous. The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing the towering form of High Chancellor Valther. The alien's crystalline body pulsed with internal light, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. Beside him stood Ambassador Zethkar and 3 other representatives from different galactic species, each bearing the marks of recent combat and desperate flight. "Admiral Carter," Valther began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, "we come to you not as superiors addressing a primitive species, but as desperate beings seeking salvation. The Devourers have consumed the Rigel system completely. 47 billion souls, reduced to raw energy in less than 12 hours. Our combined fleets cannot match their adaptive capabilities." Dr. Amy Foster, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stepped forward with a datapad containing her analysis of the Devourer specimens. She had spent the last 3 hours studying the alien intelligence reports, and her findings were both fascinating and terrifying. The Devourers appear to be a form of artificial intelligence that has evolved beyond its original programming, she explained to the assembled aliens. They adapt to energy patterns and defensive strategies because they expect logical military responses. But they have never encountered the chaotic, unpredictable nature of human warfare. Your species fight with precision, honor, and calculated strategies. Humans fight to win, regardless of the cost. The alien representatives exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a susurrus of clicks, hums, and light patterns. Finally, Zethkar spoke directly to Carter. "Admiral, we have studied your species' military history through the cultural exchanges. Your wars are unlike anything we have experienced. You employ tactics that we would consider barbaric, weapons that defy logical design, and strategies that prioritize victory over honor. We do not understand how you can function as a society with such violent tendencies." Carter almost smiled at the aliens' confusion. They had no concept of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to embrace controlled chaos in the service of a greater good. While the galactic species had evolved past the need for creative destruction, humans had refined it into something approaching art. "What exactly are you offering in exchange for our assistance?" Carter asked, his voice carrying the authority. of someone who had spent 40 years in military service. Full membership in the Galactic Council, Veltha replied immediately. Access to our technological databases, including faster-than-light communication, advanced energy generation, and gravitational manipulation, territorial rights to 17 uninhabited systems in the Orion Arm, and most importantly, recognition as a full partner in galactic civilization. The offer was generous, more than humanity had dared hope for during first contact. But Carter sensed there was more to the alien desperation than they were admitting. The Devourers had forced proud, advanced civilizations to beg for help from a species they considered primitive. "We accept," Carter said simply. "But understand this, human. Military doctrine is not bound by your concepts of honorable warfare. We will use every weapon at our disposal, employ every tactic that grants us advantage, and show no mercy to an enemy that threatens innocent lives." The aliens seemed taken aback by the directness of his response. They had expected negotiation, careful diplomatic maneuvering, and lengthy discussions about terms and conditions. Instead, they found themselves facing a species that could commit to total warfare in less than 5 minutes. "Admiral," Zethkar said carefully, "we must warn you that conventional weapons have proven useless against the Devourers. They adapt to energy patterns, learn from engagement strategies, and counter every logical military response." Carter's smile was sharp and cold. "Ambassador, you're operating under a false assumption. You believe that human warfare is logical." General Roy Hughes, Earth's defense minister, stepped forward with a datapad containing deployment orders. "We can have the first fleet in position within 72 hours. The second and third fleets will follow within the week. But understand, we fight our way, using our methods, and we expect complete tactical authority over human forces." The alien representatives agreed immediately, their desperation overriding any concerns about human military autonomy. They had no choice but to trust that humanity's chaotic approach to warfare might succeed where their logical strategies had failed. As the transmission ended, Carter turned to his staff. "Contact Luna Station. Tell Admiral Kelly Brooks to begin immediate deployment of the reserve fleets. And send a message to the Prometheus shipyards. We need every experimental weapon system they have in development." The galaxy had asked for help, and humanity was about to show them what real warfare looked like. The massive shipyards of Luna Station hummed with activity that hadn't been seen since the Outer Colony Wars. Admiral Kelly Brooks stood on the observation deck of the Central Command Tower, watching as hundreds of vessels prepared for deployment. The sight would have impressed any military commander, but it would have horrified the civilized species of the galaxy. These weren't the sleek, efficient ships that other races built for warfare. These were instruments of creative destruction, each one designed to solve problems that peaceful species couldn't even imagine. The UES Fury dominated the primary docking bay, its angular hull bristling with weapon systems that defied galactic understanding. Captain Dan Walsh supervised the loading of his ship's experimental armaments, each one a testament to humanity's unique approach to military engineering. While other species had developed elegant energy weapons that could disable enemy vessels with surgical precision, humans had created something far more terrifying, weapons that embraced chaos as a tactical advantage. "Admiral, the nuclear-tipped kinetic bombardment systems are loaded and ready," reported Lieutenant Commander Sue Price, her voice carrying the excitement of someone who had spent years waiting for a chance to test humanity's most creative weapons. "The projectiles will accelerate to 15% light speed before impact. Even if the Devourers adapt to the nuclear detonation, the kinetic energy alone will punch through anything they can generate." Brooks nodded, but her attention was focused on the more exotic weapons being loaded onto the Fury's sister ships. The self-replicating nanobots had been developed for asteroid mining, but their programming had been modified for a darker purpose. Instead of extracting valuable minerals, they would consume enemy hulls and convert the raw materials into more nanobots. The process was exponential, and once started, it would be almost impossible to stop. "What about the psychological warfare systems?" Brooks asked, reviewing the loading manifest on her datapad. Fully operational, Price replied with a grin that would have chilled alien observers. We've programmed the arrays to broadcast human war cries across all known communication frequencies. The artificial intelligence team has loaded everything from ancient battle songs to modern military cadences. If the Devourers have any form of audio processing, they're going to experience something completely outside their programming. The Admiral moved to the next docking bay, where the UES Retribution waited under the command of Captain Tim Hayes. The massive dreadnought had been designed as a mobile fortress, but its true purpose was far more sinister. The ship carried what human military strategists euphemistically called humanitarian supplies, a collection of biological weapons, chemical agents, and electromagnetic pulse devices that could cripple machine intelligence. "Captain Hayes, status report," Brooks called out as she approached the ship's loading ramp. "All systems green, Admiral," Hayes replied, his weathered face showing the confidence of someone who had spent 30 years in the military. "The biological agents are specifically designed to attack silicon-based components. If the Devourers use any form of organic computing, these compounds will dissolve their neural networks within minutes. The weapons being loaded onto the Retribution would have been banned by every galactic treaty if the aliens had even conceived of their existence. Chemical weapons that could eat through advanced alloys, biological agents that targeted specific molecular structures, and electromagnetic weapons that could fry electronic systems across an entire star system. The civilized galaxy had moved beyond such crude methods millennia ago, but humans had perfected them. Colonel Lisa Turner oversaw the loading of the ground assault equipment, her expression grim as she watched crates of flamethrowers, explosive charges, and corrosive agents being moved into the dropships. The alien representatives had been horrified when they learned that humans intended to fight the Devourers on planetary surfaces, using infantry tactics that hadn't been seen in galactic warfare for centuries. "Admiral, the alien observers are requesting another meeting," announced Communications Officer Gary Stone, his voice carrying a note of amusement. "They want to discuss the ethical implications of our weapon systems." Brooks almost laughed at the absurdity of the situation. The galaxy was facing extinction, and the survivors were concerned about the ethics of the weapons that might save them. It was a perfect example of why the civilized species had been unable to stop the Devourers in the first place. "Tell them we'll discuss ethics after we've eliminated the threat," she replied. "Right now, we have more important concerns." The loading continued through the night, with each ship receiving its complement of weapons that would have been impossible for other species to develop. The aliens had evolved beyond the need for such destructive tools, but humans had embraced them, refined them, and turned them into instruments of salvation. As dawn broke over Luna Station, the first fleet was ready for deployment. 57 ships, each one carrying weapons that defied galactic understanding, prepared to face an enemy that had consumed 17 civilizations. The Devourers had adapted to energy weapons, learned from defensive strategies, and countered every logical military response. But they had never encountered the illogical, chaotic, creative approach to warfare that humans had spent millennia perfecting. Admiral Brooks stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Vengeance, as the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. The galaxy had begged for help, and humanity was about to show them what real warfare looked like. The Devourers would learn that adapting to human tactics wasn't just difficult. It was impossible because humans never fought the same way twice. The stars ahead held either salvation or damnation, and humanity was prepared to embrace either outcome in the service of victory. The Kepler 442 system was dying when Admiral Carter's fleet arrived. The massive dreadnought UES Retribution dropped out of hyperspace alongside 46 other human warships, their sensors immediately detecting the carnage that had once been a thriving star system. 3 planets that had housed the Centauri Alliance's industrial colonies were now nothing more than glowing debris fields, their matter consumed and converted into raw energy by the DEVOURERs. Captain Tim Hayes stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the tactical display as it updated with enemy positions. The Devourers had established a perimeter around the fourth planet, where the last survivors of the Centauri Alliance were making their final stand. Their elegant ships, designed for precision warfare, were being systematically destroyed by machines that adapted to every tactic they employed. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Centauri Fleet Commander," reported Communications Officer Gary Stone. "They're requesting immediate assistance. Their fleet strength is down to 30%, and their defensive formations are collapsing." Carter studied the battlefield through the main viewer, noting the orderly retreat patterns of the alien vessels. Even in defeat, they maintained their civilized approach to warfare, preserving as many ships as possible while conducting a strategic withdrawal. It was exactly the kind of logical response that the Devourers had learned to counter. "All ships, prepare for engagement," Carter ordered. "But we're not going to rescue the Centauri fleet. We're going to do something they'll never expect." The human fleet moved into position, but instead of forming the defensive formations that galactic military doctrine demanded, they scattered across the system in what appeared to be complete chaos. The Devourers' tactical algorithms designed to counter logical military strategies couldn't process the human formation because there was no formation to analyze. "Admiral, the Devourers are moving to surround us," reported Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster from her position at the sensor station. "They're using the same encirclement tactics that destroyed the Vegan Confederacy." "Perfect," Carter replied with a smile that would have confused any alien observer. "Let them come." The Devourers closed their trap, surrounding the scattered human vessels with overwhelming numerical superiority. Their sleek, adaptive hulls pulsed with energy as they prepared to deliver the killing blow that had destroyed so many civilizations. But the humans were counting on being surrounded, and their weapons were designed for exactly this scenario. "All ships, execute Protocol 7, Carter commanded. The human fleet suddenly exploded into action, but not in any way that galactic military science could have predicted. Instead of trying to break through the enemy encirclement, they turned their weapons inward, targeting the Devourers at point-blank range with weapons that defied every principle of civilized warfare. The UES Fury unleashed its nuclear-tipped kinetic bombardment systems, sending projectiles at 15% light speed directly into the enemy formation. The Devourers' adaptive shielding, designed to counter energy weapons, proved useless against the massive kinetic impact. Machine hulls that had withstood the combined firepower of galactic fleets were torn apart by relativistic projectiles that no logical military doctrine would have developed. Captain Dan Walsh watched with satisfaction as his ship's self-replicating nanobots found their targets. The microscopic machines, originally designed for asteroid mining, began consuming Devourer hulls and converting the raw materials into more nanobots. The process was exponential, and within minutes, entire enemy vessels were being devoured from within by their own converted matter. "Broadcasting psychological warfare protocols," announced Lieutenant Commander Sue Price, her voice carrying the excitement of someone witnessing the impossible. "All frequencies are now carrying human war cries, battle songs, and military cadences." The effect on the Devourers was immediate and devastating. Their artificial intelligence systems, designed to process logical communication patterns, couldn't adapt to the chaotic noise of human warfare. Ancient battle cries from Earth's bloodiest conflicts flooded their processing centers, overwhelming their adaptive capabilities with pure, incomprehensible aggression. Colonel Lisa Turner's ground forces, deployed via heavily armed drop pods, established beachheads on the partially consumed fourth planet. Instead of the precise, surgical strikes that galactic military doctrine demanded, they launched systematic extermination campaigns using flamethrowers, explosive charges, and corrosive agents. The Devourers' resource-gathering operations, designed to counter logical defensive strategies, couldn't adapt to opponents who fought like barbarians. "Admiral, the Centauri fleet is requesting clarification of our tactics," reported Stone, his voice carrying a note of amusement. "They want to know if we're experiencing some form of system malfunction." Carter laughed, the sound echoing across the bridge as his fleet continued its chaotic assault. Tell them we're operating exactly as designed. Human military doctrine doesn't rely on logic. The battle raged for 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Devourers, for the first time in their existence, encountered an enemy that couldn't be countered because there was no logic to counter. Human tactics changed every few minutes, weapons were deployed in ways that defied rational analysis, and strategies were abandoned the moment they showed signs of working. As the last Devourer vessel fell to the combined assault of kinetic weapons, nanobots, and psychological warfare, the surviving Centauri fleet found themselves staring at something unprecedented, a human victory achieved through methods that civilized species couldn't even comprehend. "Admiral Carter," came a transmission from the Centauri fleet commander, "we must know how you achieved this victory. Our tactical computers cannot analyze your strategy." Carter's response would be remembered throughout galactic history. "Commander, you're making the same mistake the Devourers made. You assume we had a strategy." The war escalated beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Admiral Gary Stone commanded a fleet of converted industrial vessels, each one carrying weapons that had originally been designed for peaceful purposes, but had been transformed into instruments of apocalyptic destruction. The massive ships drifted through the void like mechanical harbingers of doom, their hulls bristling with planet-cracking devices that had once been used for asteroid mining. "Admiral, we have confirmation that the Devourers are establishing a major processing facility in the Tau Ceti system," reported Captain Michelle Davis from her position aboard the UES Inferno. "Intelligence estimates suggest they're converting the entire system into a resource extraction operation." Stone studied the tactical display, noting the positions of the enemy vessels surrounding the doomed star system. The Devourers had learned to expect human interference, but they still couldn't predict what form that interference would take. Their adaptive algorithms had been designed to counter logical military responses, not the creative madness that humanity brought to warfare. "All ships prepare for Operation Scorched Earth," Stone commanded. "If the Devourers want to consume star systems, we're going to deny them the resources by destroying the systems first." The human strategy was simple, brutal, and completely insane by galactic standards. Instead of trying to save the planets that the Devourers were consuming, humanity would destroy them first, leaving nothing but radioactive debris that even the adaptive machines couldn't process. It was a tactic that horrified the civilized species of the galaxy, but they couldn't argue with its effectiveness. The converted industrial ships moved into position around the Tau Ceti system, their massive hulls dwarfing even the largest Devourer vessels. The planet-cracking weapons, originally designed to split asteroids for mining operations, had been modified to create controlled stellar collapse. The process would destroy everything in the system, including the human fleet, but it would also eliminate the Devourers' ability to harvest resources. "Captain Davis, status report on the Torch Fleet," Stone requested, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had spent 40 years making impossible decisions. "All systems operational, Admiral," Davis replied from the bridge of her flagship. "The stellar ignition devices are charged and ready. We can trigger premature supernova in any star system within range." The Torch Fleet was humanity's most terrifying creation, a collection of ships equipped with weapons that could turn stable stars into exploding death traps. The technology had been developed during the early days of human space exploration, when scientists had wondered if they could artificially trigger stellar collapse. Now, that theoretical knowledge had become a weapon of mass destruction on a galactic scale. "Admiral, the Galactic Council is requesting immediate communication," announced Communications Officer Pete Adams. "They want to discuss the ethical implications of our current strategy." Stone almost laughed at the absurdity of the situation. The galaxy was facing extinction, and the survivors were still concerned about fighting fairly. It was exactly the kind of thinking that had allowed the Devourers to consume 17 civilizations without effective resistance. "Tell them we'll discuss ethics after we've eliminated the threat," he replied. "Right now we have more important concerns." The battle for Tau Ceti began with the Devourers attempting to use their standard encirclement tactics, but the human fleet responded with something unprecedented, They began destroying the very planets they were supposed to be defending. The planet-cracking weapons fired in sequence, turning 4 inhabited worlds into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The Devourers' tactical algorithms couldn't process the human strategy because it violated every principle of logical warfare. No civilized species would destroy valuable resources to deny them to an enemy. The machines had been programmed to expect opponents who fought to preserve life and maintain territorial integrity, not barbarians who would burn entire star systems. To achieve victory? Initiating stellar collapse sequence, Davis announced from the Torch Fleet's command ship. All vessels, prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace. The stellar ignition devices fired simultaneously, injecting exotic matter into the heart of the Tau Ceti star. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. The star began to collapse under its own gravity, then exploded outward in a supernova that would be visible from neighboring systems for the next 1,000 years. The explosion consumed everything in the system: the Devourers' processing facility, their resource extraction equipment, and the human fleet that had triggered the stellar collapse. But the sacrifice achieved its goal. The Devourers lost more resources in the Tau Ceti system than they had gained from consuming the previous 3 star systems. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy," Adams reported. "The Devourers are beginning to retreat from several systems. Their expansion has slowed significantly." Stone nodded, watching the tactical display as red markers indicating Devourer positions began to fade. The machines were learning that fighting humans meant accepting unacceptable losses, but they couldn't adapt to an enemy that was willing to destroy everything rather than accept defeat. General Pete Adams led the ground forces that implemented scorched earth tactics on a dozen worlds, using flamethrowers and explosive charges to destroy anything that might be useful to the Devourers. The strategy was brutal and effective, leaving nothing but radioactive wasteland in their wake. "Admiral, the alien fleet commanders are requesting tactical conferences," reported Stone's aide. "They want to understand our strategy." "Tell them the strategy is simple," Stone replied. "We deny the enemy everything they need to survive, even if it means destroying everything we're trying to protect." The war had evolved beyond conventional military doctrine into something approaching divine wrath. Humanity had become the galaxies, destroyers burning so bright that even the void itself couldn't swallow their light. The Devourers, for the first time in their existence, were learning what it meant to face an enemy that fought without logic, without mercy, and without limits. The final battle began at the galactic core, where the Devourers had established their primary processing facility among the ancient stars that had witnessed the birth of civilization itself. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 300 ships from every corner of human space had volunteered for what everyone knew would be a one-way mission. The Devourers had retreated to their stronghold after months of defeats at human hands, but they had learned from each encounter. Their massive processing station was protected by adaptive shields that had been modified to counter human weapons, and their fleet formations showed signs of attempting to copy human chaotic tactics. The machines were evolving, trying to become as unpredictable as their human enemies. "Admiral, Dr. Foster's final calculations are confirmed," reported Captain Dan Walsh from the bridge of the UES Fury. "The exotic matter bombs will create a cascading black hole effect that will consume everything within a 50 light-year radius. There will be no escape once the reaction begins." Carter nodded, accepting the inevitable with the calm that came from 40 years of military service. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and horrifying in its scope. The combined scientific minds of humanity and the surviving galactic species had developed a weapon that would create an artificial black hole, consuming both the Devourers and the human fleet in a gravitational collapse that would echo through space-time itself. "All ships, final systems check," Carter commanded. "Remember, we're not just fighting for humanity today. We're fighting for every species that the Devourers have consumed, and every civilization that they might consume in the future." The response came from every ship in the fleet, a chorus of voices that represented the best and bravest of humanity. Captain Tim Hayes from the Retribution, Colonel Lisa Turner leading the ground assault teams, Lieutenant Commander Sue Price commanding the fighter squadrons, and dozens of other officers who have volunteered to sacrifice everything for the chance to eliminate the threat forever. "Admiral, the Galactic Council is transmitting their final message," announced Communications Officer Gary Stone. "High Chancellor Velther wants to speak with you personally." The holographic projector flickered to life, revealing the crystalline form of the alien leader. His internal light pulsed with emotion as he looked upon the human fleet preparing for its final mission. "Admiral Carter, on behalf of all surviving species in the galaxy, I want you to know that your sacrifice will be remembered until the last star burns out. You have shown us what it means to fight without reservation, to embrace destruction in the service of preservation. We will build monuments to your courage and teach our children about the day humanity burned so bright that even darkness itself was consumed." Carter's response was simple and direct. "Chancellor, tell the galaxy that when the void came calling, humanity answered with fire. We may not survive this battle, but neither will our enemies." The transmission ended and the human fleet moved toward the galactic core. The Devourers responded with everything they had, launching waves of adaptive vessels that had been modified to counter human weapons. But the machines still couldn't understand the fundamental nature of human warfare. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about making sure that evil couldn't survive. The battle raged for 18 hours, as human ships fought their way through layer after layer of Devourer defenses. The exotic matter bombs had to be placed precisely at the gravitational center of the processing facility, and every minute of delay gave the machines more time to adapt to human tactics. Captain Walsh's final transmission became legendary throughout the galaxy. "Tell the stars that when darkness came calling, humanity answered with fire. We burned so bright that even the void itself couldn't swallow our light." The UES Fury was the last ship to reach the target zone, its hull scarred by weapons that could dissolve matter at the molecular level. Walsh personally armed the exotic matter bombs, knowing that he had perhaps 30 seconds before the gravitational cascade began. "All ships, mission accomplished," he reported. "The devices are armed and the reaction is beginning. It has been an honor serving with you all." The artificial black hole formed at the heart of the Devourer processing facility, its gravitational pull consuming everything within range. The machines that had terrorized the galaxy for months were pulled into a gravitational singularity so powerful that even their adaptive technology couldn't counter it. The human fleet followed them into oblivion, their sacrifice ensuring that the threat would never return. The explosion could be seen from neighboring galaxies, a pillar of light that marked the spot where humanity had made its final stand. When the gravitational effects finally stabilized, there was nothing left but empty space and the memory of the species that had been willing to destroy itself to save others. Ambassador Lisa Ward delivered the final eulogy to the assembled galactic species. "Humanity saved us all, but they also showed us who we really were. We called ourselves civilized, but when extinction came for us, we begged barbarians to save us. They did, but the price was everything they had. The memorial fleet that was, built in honor of human sacrifice, carried a simple message to any future threats. The galaxy is under human protection. Approach with caution, depart with haste, or burn with the rest." Even in death, humanity had become the galaxy's guardian, their memory serving as a warning to any who would threaten innocent life. The stars themselves seemed brighter after the sacrifice, as if the light of human courage had somehow become part of the cosmic background radiation, ensuring that their fire would burn forever in the darkness between the worlds.